Welcome to another ASMR video. Today, as usual, I'm going to be going through some notes that I've made, most of which are related to philosophy. Really, they're just my ideas and my thoughts. Before I begin though, I do want to mention that I recently asked people on my Snapchat and Instagram what they thought about these videos, because I did receive a message from one person saying that they liked my videos, but they thought that they kind of contradicted each other, the two different aspects of my videos. Of course, I do ASMR, which mostly is to, I guess, help people relax or go to sleep. But at the same time, I'm talking about things that for a lot of you seem to be quite thought-provoking. And so they kind of contradict each other. So I asked people what they thought about that, and it was pretty inconclusive. And it was kind of 50-50 between people that think the videos are contradictory and that I should do ASMR videos and philosophical videos separately, and then other people that had no problem with it. There are pros and cons to either. Obviously, if you do have a problem with the contradictory nature of these videos, and of course that would be solved if I separated them. But at the same time, doing them in the same video kind of creates a dual purpose sort of situation, where it's like if you don't care about what I'm saying, maybe you'll still be able to listen to this and go to sleep. And if you do care about what I'm saying, then maybe the fact that I'm speaking quietly doesn't bother you at all. Because it's 50-50, for now, I'm going to keep it as it is, especially because if I was going to separate them and do ASMR videos and philosophical videos separately, I don't know exactly what I would be talking about in my ASMR videos anymore. So for now, I'm going to keep it as it is. But if you have any thoughts about that, then let me know. I'm going to jump straight in with the first note. I do also want to mention that when I write these notes, I don't write them specifically for these videos. I just write them in the moment because I have an idea, and I'm trying to get into the habit of writing the ideas down so that they're not forgotten. So a lot of the time, they're not taking anything into consideration, like the fact that, a lot of people are going to be watching this video. So understand that my intention isn't to offend, even though, if I'm being honest, I don't really care if I offend. Okay, so I think people who believe in the law of attraction are borderline delusional. But at the end of the day, if delusion is what it takes to be positive, hardworking, optimistic and happy, then maybe delusion is better than cynical realism. So again, my intention isn't to offend anyone that maybe is a believer in the law of attraction, which, as far as I understand, is this idea that if you visualize and think about your dreams and your goals every single day, then eventually the universe will give them to you, as if in some way the universe is listening to you and you're sending out these positive signals, and once it receives them, it will then, I guess, create events or opportunities in your life that will allow you to achieve what you're dreaming of. There never seems to be really an explanation as to how exactly that works. And of course, it's basically supernatural in terms of the reality of what it claims, which is why I refer to it as delusional. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything that is real in the universe has to make sense, because the reality is that it just doesn't. But I'm just saying that I have no personal reason to believe in that, especially considering there doesn't seem to be any real explanation as to how or why it works. But that's not really the point. The point is that I was thinking about it and how delusional and kind of stupid it seems to me initially, but then realizing that if I ignore the theory itself and just look at the result of the theory, then I realize that the result for a lot of people that believe in the law of attraction are constantly positive, and they're constantly optimistic about their goals, and they're constantly hardworking, and they're kind of just positive and happy. And at the end of the day, if their delusional theory about the universe and how it works results in just happiness, then how could that possibly be a bad thing? Especially when you compare it to someone that maybe is a cynical realist similar to me, who constantly questions everything and is trying to dissect everything and figure out, or I guess prove that it doesn't make any sense, and calling things stupid and all of this. That person a lot of the time is very unhappy and has a very cynical, negative outlook on life and the universe. So even though maybe I could side with the cynical realist and say that they make more sense, at the end of the day, you can't really argue with the results. So I think that's a very interesting thing. I think that it was interesting for me to realize that distinction, because I think it's similar in a lot of ways to maybe religion, in that, I'm not religious, and I've spent a lot of my life being very cynical towards religion, because again, it's essentially supernatural, and it requires you to have faith, which is basically me taking somebody's word for it, me believing in something without any evidence. That's pretty much the definition of faith. And there are so many aspects of religion that require you to believe in, I guess magic, for lack of a better word. And so I spent a lot of time being very cynical towards that and just thinking that it was stupid and that it doesn't make sense. And to a certain degree, I still believe that. But at the end of the day, a lot of religious people are very happy, and a lot of religious people find fulfillment, and they find psychological and emotional relief in God or their religion, especially people that have gone through really tough times. So at the end of the day, I can sit here and I can try and point out how religion doesn't make sense, but if it helps people, if the result of religion in many different cases is nothing but positive, then what's the issue? So that was just one little thought that I had at one point. Now the next note is this: poverty is a blessing. Imagine being born with everything. There's no room to grow or space to improve your life. Being born at the bottom means you have the privilege to progress in life, and it sets your standards and expectations of life low, so it takes less for you to be happy. I think this is a thought I had that really helped me, and it's something I really want to make sure I constantly remember. And so many people spend their life complaining and looking at poverty as a bad thing, and of course it is. In the reality of things, I was born into poverty, and of course not poverty to the extreme level that many other people in the world have to deal with, but poverty in the context of the first world at least. And I, again, spent a lot of my time, I was raised with this idea that it was tough to be born in poverty, and that it was a bad thing, and that it was horrible, and you have to deal with money issues, and you have to live in dangerous areas, and you have to go to the worst schools and things like that. But as an adult, being able to look at it in hindsight, I can now look at it, again, decide to look at it as a privilege, because you can really decide to look at things and perceive things however you want. And I think I have a lot more to gain from interpreting poverty as a blessing as opposed to interpreting it as a hindrance. I could spend my life going on and on about how hard my childhood was, but what does that actually give me? I have nothing to actually gain from that. And so instead, I decide to look at poverty as a blessing and as something that has benefited me, for the reasons that I pointed out in my note. I mentioned the comparison between people that grow up in poverty and people that grow up with everything. As a child, I remember constantly being jealous of the hypothetical rich kids that I didn't even know, because they grew up and they got given everything they ever wanted, and they went to the best schools, and they had both their parents and all the money in the world, and they kind of had their lives paved out for them. And I was always very jealous of that. But again, as I now realize I can choose to interpret things as I like, I can now feel sorry for them, because they, being born with everything, probably don't even realize how privileged they are, and they probably don't even feel any level of satisfaction or pleasure from everything that they've always been given. It's almost like they've been desensitized by their wealth, which of course is a horrible thing in reality to have to go through, and I'm privileged that I don't have that. I have many bad experiences and tough times that I can compare current experiences to, which makes my current experiences seem so much better no matter what they are. And when you look at this sense of progress that you can have in life, this feeling of moving up in the world and making your life better and better and better, that's a very fulfilling and satisfying sensation to have. If you start off at the top, there's hardly any room to improve and progress. If you are born with wealth and riches, you're never really going to be able to obtain that sensation of growth and progression. Whereas if you're born at the bottom, you've got, the sky is your limit. You can grow as much as you can, much as you want. So I think just like anything in life, it's a very nuanced situation, and there's always positives to take out of it. And even though it might seem naturally to look at something like poverty as an extremely negative thing, the reality is you have 100% control over how you interpret that thing, and you also have 100% responsibility over how you think and feel. So if I interpret my poverty as an extremely negative thing, and then that interpretation affects me in a very negative way, I'm just doing that to myself. At the end of the day, being born into poverty, being born poor, isn't really anyone's fault. And even if it was, it wouldn't matter, because now, as an adult, it's irrelevant. So I think that's a very helpful thought to kind of get me out of the usual thought processes that kind of, I think as a teenager, always got me down. Okay, the next note is: perspective is everything. If you're stuck in a traffic jam, you can feel stuck, angry and helpless. But seeing the traffic jam from a higher place in the distance, it all looks orderly and almost calm and peaceful. No matter how negative something is, just understand that it's only that way from your perspective in that moment. I can't remember why the traffic jam analogy came to me, because I've never driven. I don't drive, and I've never really been in a bad traffic jam, but I suppose it's easy to step into someone's shoes. And let me just adjust this camera. Is that straight? Whatever. People seem to get so angry when they're in traffic jams, and they get frustrated, and it's because you want to go but you're helpless and you can't move. And it seems like an extremely emotionally invoking experience, and in a negative way. And because I've been thinking so much lately about perspective, like perspective as a word means so much to me now, I've really become obsessed with the idea of perspective and the power of perspective as well. I applied it to that analogy, and I realized that, for that individual person in the traffic jam in that moment, it seems like such an infuriating thing. Whereas if you were somebody else on some hill in the distance looking down at a traffic jam, it would seem so neat and orderly and almost peaceful. It's just like slow moving cars. Everything's sort of staying still. Nothing's racing by. There's no danger. So from a different perspective, the exact same thing can seem completely different. And it can turn a very negative situation into a very positive situation. And then to take it a step further, you could even look at it in the context of the perspective of time. So I suppose it's easy to say, okay, well, this thing is really bad for me, but from that person's perspective, it's really good. An easy response to that is to say, well, that's fair enough, but I'm not that person, so their perspective is irrelevant to me, and that is fair enough. But you could then also look at the fact that when that person gets to work, and then they do their shift, and then they come home and they sit down that evening and they're relaxing, the fact that they were in a traffic jam 10 hours ago is irrelevant to them. It's no longer an infuriating experience for them because it's in the past. So I think being able to also step into the shoes of your future or past self in any given moment is very helpful. It's helpful to step into the shoes of somebody or something other than yourself, and it's also helpful to step into the shoes of yourself just at a different time, because so many things that happen to us that are bad are only temporary, even the worst things. And fair enough, it might temporarily last for years, which is a very long time. If you really master the power of being able to step into your own shoes at a different time, you could say, you know what, in 5 years, in 10 years, I'm going to be over this, and it's no longer going to affect me in the negative way. And you might be able to find some level of comfort in that. So I think that's a nice little analogy that I have. Okay, another one is this. Pain and discomfort is valuable. It's inevitable, so learning to be happy with it is important. A big mistake people make is that they expect that life shouldn't be painful and difficult. So when it inevitably is, they see it as a negative thing, and it breaks them. If you look at pain as a positive, as the thing that you will use in the future to measure other experiences against, it becomes something that you embrace. The only reason anything ever seems good in life is because you compare it to the bad in life. In theory, the more painful your experiences, the more valuable they'll be, because they'll make every other experience seem better than they would have. I think that's a very valuable thing that I've been telling myself a lot lately as well. Is this idea of pain and discomfort and how that fits into life. Because, I, like everyone in the world who's ever existed, has experienced pain and discomfort. And of course, when I'm talking about philosophy, I'm mostly talking about psychological and emotional pain. And once again, just like before, perspective is a very big part in all of this. Because I can look at pain and discomfort as this horrible negative thing, and I can look at it as something that I constantly want to avoid. And I want to work towards building a life where I never have to deal with pain and discomfort ever again, because it's just the worst thing ever. But that's unrealistic. Hypothetically, it could be possible. But the reality is pain and discomfort is just most likely inevitable. And many situations, there's nothing you can do to really stop pain and discomfort from happening. And so, instead of looking at it as this very damaging thing, you can look at it as something that is going to help you. And the way that it helps you is that it makes everything else seem better. This kind of ties into a note that I made earlier about the rich kids. They grow up with everything that they ever want, and so they usually don't really have to deal with a lot of the negative things that poor kids have to deal with. But as a result of that, they're not really grateful for all the amazing things that they have in life, because all those amazing things are just normality to them. Whereas to the kids, if the poor kids had what the rich kids had, then they would be grateful. They would be constantly happy because they have all of these things that seem amazing in comparison to the bad things that they're used to. So pain or bad things that happen in life is very, very valuable, because you can use those experiences and compare them to every other experience that you have in life and make them seem better to you from your perspective. And that's one way of looking at it. If you look at your life that might be full of pain and discomfort as unfortunate and tragic and, poor you, then you're deciding to have a perspective that only affects you negatively. If you have a life that's been full of pain and discomfort and you decide that that's a great thing, because now I'm living what to everyone else might be an ordinary average life, but to me I'm deciding to look at it as amazing. I'm deciding to consider myself privileged because what I'm experiencing now is so much better compared to the horrible experiences I've had in the past. So I think that's another big thing I've been trying to do to myself psychologically, is to almost look forward to pain and discomfort. I look at it as a positive thing. I look at it as a valuable thing. And that's been a way for me to get rid of a lot of anxiety, and a way for me to feel like I'm basically unstoppable in life now. The things that really break us down and destroy us psychologically and emotionally are these bad, painful, uncomfortable things. But now I look forward to them. Now I see them as positive in a way, and so nothing can hurt me. I feel like all of these notes that I make, all of these thoughts that I have, it feels almost like my mind is adapting and evolving, and different mindsets, different philosophies, different thought processes are going to work for different people. At the end of the day, everyone's different for a million different reasons. And for me, this is just what works best. This is what makes the most sense. I feel like I'm strengthening myself. And a lot of the time it seems like a tough love kind of situation. I'm talking about looking forward to pain and things like that. It seems masochistic almost, and like I've mentioned in the past, like a very bleak and negative outlook on life. But for whatever reason, this is just what works best for me right now. It's kind of like a hardcore sort of approach to self-improvement, I guess. I don't really like that term, self-improvement, but yeah. I think I've got enough time for another one. And I think this one maybe is a similar one, more of a continuation of the last note. It seems true for most things that enduring pain is what increases strength or resistance. It applies to a lot of things, like muscles and illness. It makes sense that it could apply to the mind too. The more pain you experience in your mind, the stronger your mind will be. Just like your muscles, it will grow stronger and more resistant to future pain. People that never experience pain will be too weak to handle anything that might happen to them in life. Once again, it seems like pain is a blessing. So again, focusing on the topic of pain in life, I use the comparison between essentially working out and fighting illness, I think I mentioned. It kind of seems like a recurring theme that when something goes through pain or discomfort, it naturally has to evolve and adapt to get stronger so that it could deal with that thing in the future if it was going to happen again. which of course is kind of what does happen in a lot of natural settings. And so it sort of makes sense that the same idea might apply to the mind, that the more pain and discomfort you go through, the more your mind will evolve and adapt to be able to deal with that pain and discomfort. Once again, comparing, let's say, myself to someone that's never gone through pain, they're going to be very, ill-equipped to deal with pain and discomfort because they've never dealt with it before. Whereas somebody that has gone through a lot of pain will be accustomed to it. They will have learned how to deal with that thing emotionally and psychologically, assuming they're self-aware and conscious enough about it, and they take the right psychological approach. Once again, it seems like I'm focusing a lot on very bleak ideas. I do apologize if this is not really what people want to hear, but these videos are just me speaking my mind, being completely open and honest with no filters. And it might seem like they're very depressing thoughts, but as I already mentioned, this is just what helps me. This is what comes naturally to me, and even though it might not seem it, I'm very happy. I'm very satisfied with who I am and how I am psychologically and emotionally. I, of course, have witnessed firsthand my own growth. I'm very happy with it. And I'm going to keep on growing and keep on getting stronger. And it's ideas and thoughts like this that are helping me. And I think writing them down has been a big help in cementing them in my mind. You know, a lot of the time I'll have ideas and I'll go on a little rant to myself in my head, but then I'll forget about it. So writing them down, and then of course taking it a step further and recording myself talking about it, I think is very helpful for me. Might even be helpful for people listening to this right now, if you're going through issues, or maybe you listen to my ideas and the way that my mind works and it influences you in some way. I do have more notes, of course, but I think I'm going to leave it there for now. This video I think is long enough. Once again, if you have any ideas or thoughts on how you think I should approach these videos in the future in terms of potentially separating the ASMR and the philosophical, let me know. And I think that's everything I have to say. Thank you for watching.